Came out the bottom, I count a whole lot of young gonna worth millions of dollars. I asked out the charm, my little bitch a model. She made a few ends off for following. Yo, one on tour, a BP the child. Living a cool, I'm a title. Ain't no more worries, I'm up at it early. Young niggas tryna figure out the problem. For 30-30, I hit it like Curry. They hit me, I don't even holler. These niggas so floppy. Niggas ain't gon' stop me. Switch out my cars and my addy, my family straight, and that's all that matter. Stacking them rest and then saving, put back for whatever, whenever it happens. I put my trust in my paper, when I'm walking through straight, I don't see no one else. No, it ain't long this route. Simmons is better than steps. Stay ready, I'm already prepped. Undefeated, I feel like the champ.
What's up, KO Universe Sports Journeys? We're back once again. Always, first and foremost, want to thank God, man. Thank my Lord and Savior for giving me the story to tell, and just a platform like this to be able to share it. And just thank you to everyone, man, who have made it this far. If you are here, we're at our 8th episode. And you've been going through this journey with me, from youth to the pros. And also, man, just thank you to everybody who's been continuing to support the channel. Thank you to everyone who contributes to the channel and to this podcast. I want to say thank you to everyone. You guys mean a lot to me. The support matters. Sharing this and getting this in people's hands matters. You matter. All right. If you're an athlete watching this, I hope this is helpful to you guys, these episodes, these stories. And yeah, I hope that it's life-giving, life-changing, and uplifting. And hopefully, if you're going through some dark times right now, or you know an athlete who is going through some rough times, hopefully you can help them. Maybe this helps you help them. Just knowing this information and hearing this story, and maybe taking some things from it that can help you on your journey. Whether you're in sports or out of sports, it really doesn't matter. Again, I hope this is helpful to you guys, and I thank you. So we are going to continue to talk about my journey in college. Today we'll talk more about my time at Northern. We'll talk more family, more adversity. All right, of course. And opportunities, injuries, which is something that's very common in sports. And so we will talk about that today. And I'll kind of pick up where we left off a bit in the last episode. If you watched the last episode, if you didn't, please go back, watch these episodes again. If you're watching it for the first time and this is where you started, great. I'm glad you're here. But I would encourage you to start from the beginning and work your way up to this one. This might be a little bit of a longer episode. I try to keep it as short as I can, but there's so much to tell in so little time, right? But let's get into it. Okay, so if you watched the last episode, episode 7, I talked about Cal transferring out. what that was like, getting a new opportunity at Northern Michigan University, meeting my good friend TA at Cal, and also I mentioned, meeting my wife during that process. And so one of the topics I wanted to talk about is that, faith, relationships, and what that was like as well. So I'll tell you a little bit more about how I met my wife and when that happened. So when I left Cal, I kind of left on a whim. Didn't have a ton of communication with the coaches. Again, if you watched the last episode, this was me advocating for myself. This was me standing up for myself and making a decision, and really for the first time involving God in the process of football, which I hadn't really done before then. And so I went back home. Cal U wasn't too far from home. I'm a Pittsburgh kid, so Pittsburgh native, and so Cal U wasn't very far. And so I went back home. I told you guys I went to CCAC for a semester. And during that time, I had met my wife in church. And so this particular day, I was planning on going to a house party for New Year's. And I prayed that night. I remember praying that night, and I was like, man, Lord, if you want me to go to this party, or no, you know what I said? I said, all right, I'm either going to this party or I'm going to church for a New Year's service. And I'm like, all right, Lord, which was a stupid question to ask if you think about it. Asking God, would you rather go to church or a house party? Of course he's going to say church, right? So I prayed. I said, all right, God, if you want me to go to church, I'll call my dad. And I thought it was a given. I didn't think he'd pick up. So, I'm like, I'll call him, see if he picks up. He probably won't. I'm going to this house party, right? Wrong. I pick up the phone, call, seconds. I mean, it wasn't even a full ring. My dad picks up. He's like, hey, you want to go to church with me for New Year's service? I said, yeah. So long story short, I go to church service, great service. I rededicated my life to Christ. And, I was really just soaking it all in, the sermon, just thinking about, what was said. There was some prophetic word there that happened. And it was just a great service and a great New Year's service for me. So I'm in the back, and this girl comes up to me. She's like, hey, you remember me? And I'm like, yes, but I don't remember your name. And so it was my wife. And so the funny thing was, we had already known each other years before this, and our last conversation was in that very church, in that same spot where we met back up. So it was, I told you last episode, it was really divine how it happened, right? And so I try to keep that story as short as I can, because I got a lot to cover. But yes, I met back up with her in that same spot that we last had a conversation when we were a lot younger. I was maybe in ninth grade. She was maybe in like seventh or eighth. And yeah, she was a few years younger than me. So don't judge me. But, but yes, we met back up in the same place, and it really was divine. The timing of it. Now, was I anticipating being a married man this soon? I don't think either of us were, but, and I know this isn't a marriage relationship podcast, but again, I want to really share more about who I am, and, you know, haven't really got a lot of opportunities to do that. And so, you know, just to share, you know, a different side of me that a lot of people don't know. And, you know, people who know me know the story, but a lot of people don't. And so, you know, we met back up. Things kind of moved fairly fast. And we ended up getting married. And by the time I had completed CCAC, had been home for a while, we dated for at least a year and a half. And I had already moved off to Northern Michigan already. So I was going to school, and well, at the time I was working, because I remember last episode I told you guys that my option was to go up to Michigan, work, gain residency of Michigan, and then enroll in school, get my full scholarship, get back to balling. But you know, during that time we were dating long distance. And so we had that time period where we were long distance, and I felt like if it could work long distance, then why not? You know, and there's more to why we got married. You know, that's not the only reason. You know, at that particular time. But we felt like it was the best time to do it. So we got married, moved back out to Michigan together. I was going to school in Camp for the first time. You know, a lot of time had passed, like I said before, and really started my Northern Michigan journey. So at this point, I was up there with my friend TA. He had transferred up there. We were in the paper, the Mining Journal, you know, talking about transfers and really changing the culture, changing the way Northern Michigan had done it before. Typically, they had a ton of guys who were local. You know, I could name the names of some of these places out in Northern Michigan. You probably wouldn't believe me. If you are a Youper, which is what they refer to up there in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, I love my Michigan family, my Michigan people out there forever. My Youper family out there, great people out there, and I had honestly one of the best times I had in college was out there at my alma mater, on and off the field. And so yeah, Northern, we went out there. I was a married college athlete. How did I do that? That was really hard. And not only was it hard for me to find balance doing that, but it was hard for my wife, who didn't know anyone out there And I had been up there for a while, so I made a lot of good friendships and relationships out there. But it was really hard transition for her. And, she really jumped right into the football thing and really never left, man. Like, if you're an athlete and you're watching this, especially if you're a college or a professional athlete, the schedule is very demanding. Now, professionally, there's a lot more downtime. Depending on what kind of player you are, if you're more the face of the franchise, you're asked to do a lot of things outside of the football things that you have scheduled. But again, college, it's rigorous, right? You are literally early in the morning, you're doing football stuff, school, practice, lifting, study hall. All right. And it's wake up, wash, repeat. It's just every day the same thing daily. And so that was a very hard thing on our relationship, our marriage early on. And, finding balance. I know there's athletes out there who, and this is something that I don't think is talked about too much, is, having relationships while you're an athlete. I think there were maybe two or three guys, and it may just been two, at the time when I was at Northern, where two of us were married. So we stayed in marital housing. Northern Michigan had a great program, great support. And so we had marital housing off campus, and which was great, in good condition. Really loved it there. And so we were like one of two who were actually married. And like I said, some others, most of them in relationships. And so it's really hard to find that balance between the schedule and trying to find time for each other, taking care of responsibilities. Now we didn't have any kids at the time, which was a plus, going through that, but still it takes a lot of work and a time and attention. And a lot of times something has to give, something has to be sacrificed. Maybe it's time with my friends. Maybe it's tightening up my free time, my schedule, and sacrificing maybe some things that I want to do. But like I said, I don't want to go on a rant about relationships, because again, this is not a relationship podcast, right? But there are athletes out there who are going through some things with their relationships while they're playing, even in high school. People have relationship issues and challenges at every level. And these are some of the things that athletes have to face. But for us, we tried to have a church body that we were going to. We went to New Life Church. Shout out to Lou Pizzala at the time, who was senior pastor. Now it's someone who I would call a mentor for me, especially during that time, and really still is. General Brown, who is now the senior pastor there. But man, like, having a strong community, having like-minded people who share our faith, who could hold us accountable and continue to encourage us and continue to pray for us, really helped us last that transition as I started my Northern Michigan journey. And so yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Shout out to my wife for being amazing during that time, you know, really she just tried to support, man, the best way she could. She wasn't a football sports kind of girl. Didn't grow up into sports, but really did her best to support me during that time. And it was tough for her. It was tough for both of us, you know, being in a new situation like that where it's uncommon you see college athletes married, right? So you can imagine how tough that was, still playing sports with a demanding schedule and still trying to be the best student and the best athlete that I could be. But she really supported me in school and, you know, was there for me as I played my career there, continued my career at Northern. So shout out to her, the real MVP. So moving on just for time's sake. So we had more adversity. You got some more adversity for y'all, man. Man, it didn't stop. It didn't stop. So what happened was when I got there, right, I told you me and TA were in the paper. Like, it was exciting time for Northern, football wise. And, you know, they were really expecting guys like myself, TA. We had some guys from Florida transfer, guys from California transfer. The coach that brought me out there, Coach Ari, was really dominating Northern with recruiting for the first time, really, because I don't think before then Northern really attracted players outside of that local UP area. And there are some ballers in the UP. But you think about football states, you know, Texas, Florida, Ohio, even like California, you know, and there's more, Georgia. I mean, we can go on and on about top talent in each state. But in this particular situation, we had some guys from, obviously me from PA, and guys from California, Florida, coming all the way from across the state to the little UP, to come ball at Northern. And we had some ballers, and we were really expected to turn this program around, and we were excited. The coaching staff was excited to have some new fresh talent and some high talent from other places. And so we were just as excited. And so my first practice in the spring, you know, I was so excited to just get back on the field. I had been working for a little while, for 6 months, you know, working out, working, not going to school. And so I had a lot of time to think about, you know, think about the season, you know, train and prepare mentally and physically. And I was so ready. In my mind, I was so ready to get started. I was excited for the new opportunity and just to see how God really came through and provided a new opportunity for me. You know, and then just being newly married was exciting. as well, and to have my wife out there with me as I experienced this was exciting and fun for me as well. So we get there, man. First practice, I'm catching punts. I'm starting kick return, punt return, outside receiver, slot receiver. They had packages for me to be in Wildcat. At that time, Wildcat was a thing, and the coaching staff was lit for the season, man. Like, and so again, first practice, I tried on these turf shoes. I never really used turf shoes. The type of turf shoe that I was using from a teammate that I had at Northern End, and I had been using cleats, and this teammate had suggested, man, like, why are you wearing those cleats? And I'm like, why not? I'm killing everybody right now. And he's like, well, nobody else wears those. Like, why would you wear those? I'm like, I didn't care. I'm like, okay. So he's like, I'm like, I don't even have any. So he's like, you could just wear mine, because he was injured. So he was out probably for the season, I think, potentially. And so he gave me his turf shoes. I wore them. I remember I was catching punts. I'm like, I'm not really liking these things. The horn goes off. Practice is starting. I didn't want to leave because I'm a starter, you know what I mean? And so I didn't want to leave and go to the locker room and change my cleats. And so, you know, I was trying to continue to make an impression, which I was already. And so first live full padded practice, we're in the drill, doing individual period, and I catch a pass on the sideline. My foot gets caught in the turf. My legs are fully extended. I'm catching the ball on the sideline, and my foot gets caught in the turf. My knee gives out. All I see is my knee just separate and sublux and go back in. And I hit the ground, and I'm like, oh no. Like, I knew I was hurt bad. I never had a serious injury before this. You know, football is definitely a violent game. Football is definitely, you know, injury is bound to happen. And so for me, you know, I had never been hurt that bad before. And I knew I was hurt bad at this point. And so I could not get up. They brought the gator out, all right, which is, you know, the thing you see Marshawn Lynch riding around in. If you know the Marshawn Lynch cow YouTube video, him riding around in it, right? So yeah, and so they pick me up, they take me off the field, and they do what they call a Lockman's test. Lockman test tests the strength of the ACL, right? So when you have knee injuries, that's one of the first things they do. They grab your calf and they pull it towards their chest, right? And what they're doing is checking the strength of the ACL, and to see if it is potentially damaged or separated completely. And you can tell a lot. If you're a trainer, you can speak more on that. But you know from a Lockman's test whether something is torn or not. They checked the ACL, And I could see on the look on my trainer's face, like, she was like, oh, I'm like, oh, please don't tell me I tore my ACL. They extended my leg and did a lateral test, right? This is where I went crazy. They tested lateral. So they're moving it to test the LCL. The LCL is the outside of the knee. MCL is the inside of the knee. All right. So all these ligaments support the femur and the tibia. Right. And so, they tested it. Man, I tell you right now, they tested lateral, and my knee just was like jelly. Like, it just literally moved like nothing was connected. And they said, oh, we need to get him to the ER right now. I was like, okay, yeah. I was in so much pain, excruciating pain. But when she said we need to get him to the ER now, I knew, okay, yeah, my season is probably over. And she said, yeah, it's definitely an ACL and most likely an LCL. I didn't even know at that point that I had an LCL. It's funny because a part of my studies at Northern Michigan was exercise science and a lot of anatomy. And so I learned a lot about the study of the body, right? So, during that injury, I learned a lot about injuries. I learned a lot about the body and how the body works. And so, I ended up, my degree field of study was physical education, coaching, health, and nutrition. So I was going more towards the coaching end. I knew that I wanted to coach football after I was done playing, right? And so that was one thing that attracted me to Northern in the first place when I left Cal, is that academically it aligned with where I saw myself going. And so loved it. I loved my education there. I truly did. And so back to the injury, went to the ER. They're like, yeah. My diagnosis was complete tear to ACL, complete tear to LCL, meniscus was torn, and my MCL as well. When I saw the team doctor, he said, I mean, you have to have surgery there. And I knew it because even with the brace on, if I put pressure on my leg, if I put my foot down, even inside the brace, my knee would just be jelly. And so I would have had to have surgery just to even walk, let alone to play again. And so, that was a rough one. The team doctor was like, in my 20 years of doing this, I've never seen a combination like this before in my life. And he said, I'm not going to lie to you, Kevin. He's like, I'm not going to do this surgery. And this guy was like the only knee surgeon in like miles and miles and miles and miles from this campus. So he was considered one of the best out there. And I appreciated his honesty at that point. But I'm like, man, what am I going to do? So he was like, well, I happen to have a good friend of mine is the best surgeon in the country. And at the time I was in his room in the doctor's office with my trainer, my athletic trainer, Chris Rowe, amazing trainer. And she was there in the office, or in the room, I'm sorry, with me. And she's just looking at him like, what are we going to do? Like, what is he going to do? And he said, well, this friend of mine, he's, I don't know how long of a drive this is for you or a flight for you, but he's in Pittsburgh. It might be, you might have to travel. And she like lit up and she smiled and she laughed, and the doctor's like, what's going on? And my trainer is like, well, he's from Pittsburgh. And he's like, oh, well, perfect. He's like, well, I don't know where you're located in Pittsburgh, but he's at a place called UPMC down on the south side. And I'm like, oh man, I'm from the south side, my mom 10 minutes from there. And so he was like, well, great, I can set that up and let them know about you and get that set up. And so it's funny, I had a Bible study before a few days before this happened, I believe. And weekly Bible study we would go to, and we talked about and this guy Ken, pastor, he's elder of the church in New Life, and really a father figure for me, a mentor for me, somebody who really helped me deepen my faith and go deeper with God. And so he had really taught us that week about when adversity happens, not to ask God why, not to ask God, like, why is this happening to me? Why would you do this? And to take that a response, but more so, what are you trying to teach me in this moment? What are you trying to accomplish in this moment? And so it's funny how that message we got at Bible study was quickly applied in a real life situation where, man, I could have been down and out. And thankfully, even when I was laying on that field when I was hurt, there was a split second in time where I wanted to ask God, why is this happening right now? And I was literally just on the verge of losing my mind and saying, yo, God, like, why would you let this happen? I just went through all this to get up here. You know what I mean? And I quickly checked myself and I said, okay, you know what? The easy thing to do is say, why, God, why? And I said, okay, God, what are you trying to teach me? Like, what? And in the midst of being in pain, but, it changed my perspective on what was happening in my life. And I feel like that time, thankfully I had a solid group of young people my age who, were trying to deepen their faith with Jesus, and adults who were really speaking into my life and really mentoring me. I believe that helped me go through that, as well as having my wife at the time support me and be there for me during that time of recovery and things. And so it was a dark time, but it was a time where the Lord had got me alone and really allowed me the chance to get closer to him and to show me more of what life looked like with him. And so, yeah, my faith really became my own, I would say, during this time. And it became real, where like real life situations were happening. I'm out of my parents' house, out of my mom's house, and and now, I have to live it out myself. And so I think everybody needs to go through that time, when you talk about, faith in Christ becoming your own. But, yeah. So the injury was, for me, the obstacle of my career, and I had the choice. How will I respond? And we talked about that in previous episodes. How do you respond to adversity? What's your mentality? What's your perspective? Because perspective is everything, and not having the right perspective can also lead you to destruction, in a lot of ways. Not having the right mentality can lead you off the deep end. And so thankfully I had people around me and support around me to help me keep the right perspective. And so that's why it's important to have a community of people around you who can keep you up, right? And if you don't have that, look for it. And I would encourage you, to pray about that. Maybe you never prayed to Jesus before, but why not? And this is why I love this podcast thing, man, because you can really, this is real life at the end of the day, man. There's nothing fake about this. When you're out on your own, you're an athlete, and even if you're not, and you're, some people call it adulting, if you're in that phase, whatever phase you're in, at some point it becomes real, right? And you got to make real decisions. And so, for me, I had a choice. And, what would that choice be? And for me, I was like, man, I'm coming back from this. I remember the team doctor said, listen, I know you're a special player. The coaches speak highly of you. They say you're a special player and potentially, a pro level NFL caliber player. And so, this is a hurt piece for them. Like, and they would love to have you back, but this type of injury, there is once again, and it's almost similar to the moment I had at Cal, where the doctor was like, there is no timeline for this. I can't even give you a timeline. I can't even give you a timeline of recovery. And so he's like, man, this could be 1 year. This could be 2 years. Like, he said, I don't know. And quite frankly, I don't even know if returning to sports is even in the cards. um, he said, I know for sure that you will always have a brace on. He said, you will not be able to do any activity without a knee brace. And so when he said that, again, knowing me, I'm like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. I will come back from this. And will I have a brace on for the rest of my life? No. I knew that the things that were happening happened for a reason. The things that were happening for me. All right. And these things that were happening, I will overcome. And so my mentality was, I'm coming back. And I'm coming back bigger, faster, and stronger than I was before. And that was the end of the story. Now, did I tell the doctor that? No. Was that my mentality? Yeah. And so, fast forward, I went back home. I got the surgery from the greatest knee surgeon to probably ever walk this earth, Dr. Freddie Fu, who passed away recently. But thank God, I remember getting the surgery there and doing therapy, starting therapy at UPMC, and they're like, you must be a special player to have gotten the Freddie Fu to operate on you. This dude is not at a point where he's doing surgeries anymore. They're like, this guy is retired. He does conferences everywhere, clinics, and just kisses babies all day. Like, you know what I mean? And I remember, I guess he heard about my case and heard how rare it was. I don't think it had really ever happened before. And so I think that intrigued him, and he wanted to get his hands on it, and I can attest to that. As a competitor, you're like, oh, he's the best. Okay. Yeah. I want some of that, And so, I think a lot of what Freddie Fu did was just like, I want to get my hand on that and see if I can put him back together. And he sure did. It took, how long did it take for me to come back from this? Man, it took about 2 years. And again, there was no timeline. I had, again, a great support system in my athletic trainer and Chris Rowe and Amanda, who I'm still in touch with to this day. She was everything in how I overcame this injury. And again, it goes back to who are you surrounding yourself with. And I thank God that Amanda had the mentality that I needed, because a lot of times you get the wrong people in your ear, it can result in bad or negative outcomes for you, just having the wrong person in your ear. And so Amanda would always let me know during that time of recovery, like, you're healed, you're fixed, you're healed. Now you need to, it's the mentality that you need now to overcome this. And a lot of times she would tell me, like, it's all in your head. It's all in your head. Because I feel certain things and it would feel weird. Some weeks I'd have up and down weeks where I felt like I wanted to quit. Times where I felt empowered and I'm like, I got this, I could do this. And so it was a roller coaster going through that. And so you know, thank God I had my wife. Thank God I had mentors, a church body around me, and you know, God just put even a family in during that time, who I considered on my family, a Michigan family, pastor of another church, ran into him during the time where I was working, ended up being a father figure to me for life, man. And God just really provided during the worst time of my life. I felt was really one of the greatest times. And you know, he put a men of God in my life during that time. And this one in particular, married man, had kids of his own. And, you know, really spoke into my life and helped me become a better man of God. And, you know, show me how to be a man. I really didn't know how to do that. Didn't know how to be a husband. Didn't know how to do any of those things. And so that's why a mentor is so important. It's important to have that as a man, as a woman. Good support system, you know, good people around you, people who can challenge you, people who can push you, people who can love you and support you and encourage you as well. And I had all those things during that time. And I think for me, if you talk about how did I overcome that, it took a village. It took a village of people to help me overcome and get through that time in my life. Because it felt like the end. And so, yeah, college, out there again was great. I loved what I studied. I did so much better in school. I ended up graduating. I came back from, well, first of all, I did come back from the injury. I remember when I came back, whole new offensive coaching staff, new head coach, felt like I was starting from scratch. He brought in some young talent from other states, and I had to prove myself again, but coming off really a career-ending injury for most people. And so the mental part of coming back was a challenge, the biggest challenge. I had put the work in physically with therapy, did everything I could and more. And so did that, came back. I remember my first game back versus Ashland, I had a catch. And that week I took the knee brace off. I had been practicing with the knee brace. My coach would call me the kid with the knee brace, you know, and I hated that, you know. Now, yeah, it made me stand out a little bit. Yeah, sure. But he didn't like the fact that I was a receiver with a knee brace, and I didn't either, quite frankly. But, you know, my receiver coach came to me. He's like, man, I think this knee brace is hindering you. And I think it's a constant reminder of what happened before they had gotten there. You know, I had a new receiver coach. I had a new offensive coordinator, a new head coach. And so, you know, he knew about the injury, how severe it was. They watched me rehab and do therapy in the spring. You know, I was in the dome, which we played in the dome there. And, you know, yeah, they watched me work hard while they practice. And so they saw my work ethic. They saw that I'm serious about it. I was passionate about the game. They saw, you know, who I was, and so they knew that, you know, about this injury. Again, he let me know he thought that about the knee brace, and I was terrified to take it off, but I had enough courage to take it off, and I did. I took it off that week, and again, I remember my first catch. I got hit from corner, All-American corner that was playing me that game. He was one of the top corners in the nation and in D2, and he was really a NFL caliber corner that people were talking about on their draft board. And so I wanted to, it was a big task for me that game. My family came out because it was in Ohio, and watched my first game back. And I remember taking a hit right on the knee. I mean, he literally, I caught the ball, ran upfield. He literally hit me directly on my knee. I was like, obviously not thinking in the game, but when I popped back up, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on 2 feet. And I'm like, all right, I'm back, you know? And so that was a big game for me to come back from that, to do it with no knee brace, to overcome that was a great feeling, and to prove that doctor wrong and to prove myself right, I enjoyed it, man. I celebrated after that game, and so I did come back from it. Again, it took me 2 years to come back from that. A lot changed in that 2 years, and I was in a whole new offense, a whole new playbook. Had to learn everything I just learned. I had to throw out the window. So that was going on my third playbook in just a matter of 3 seasons. And so that was a challenge as well, learning a new system. And so we were spread offense, really more West Coast offense. We had a guy who was more like California, you know, oriented. So that West Coast, you know, was really ingrained in him. Fast forward for time's sake, or almost at an hour already. I graduated from Northern with a bachelor's in phys ed coaching, health and nutrition, and graduated with honors. And so that was huge for me too. If you had listened to, you know, the 4th or 5th episode, we talked about high school and my grades and how that impacted everything. And so to achieve not just a bachelor's, which I was the first in my family to ever graduate college, but to do it with honors. Shout out to my wife too, because she was helping me through the school part of this. But man, to accomplish that was huge. Because man, like I had done so poorly academically early on, and so to do this, I not just graduated honors, I got academic All-American, like award. I mean, man, like it felt good. It felt real good to accomplish that, and again to prove that to myself, to prove, you know, doubters wrong was satisfying for me. And so I talked recently about last episode about transferring and how you know, I had 2 seasons left, and if I would have went Division 1 from where I was, I would have lost a year and potentially may not even have a year left to compete. And so I took the route of staying Division 2 to keep that eligibility, to keep those 2 seasons. So I competed the 1 season at Northern. My time was extended there because of the injury. You know, I actually lost my scholarship at Northern because I had to come down part-time so that I wouldn't lose my eligibility while I was hurt. And so it was just kind of little workarounds to kind of keep eligibility. And so the full scholarship that I had coming in, I got hurt, lost it. Now I was a student, right, to finish my time there. Now I could have potentially gotten that back, and I did once I got back on the field. But I chose not to continue on at Northern once I graduated. I had a year left for eligibility. And so I wanted to get into this a little bit too. Hopefully we can bring it to a close soon. But when I graduated there, went back home, and since I had a year left, I was trying to figure out, where am I going to use that? Am I going to use it? What's next? And so praying about it, I really felt like, all right, like I'm going to use this last year and try to get myself a shot, to put myself in position to be drafted, or sign free agent. Being a small school guy, it wasn't super common to be drafted from a small school, but it wasn't uncommon, right? But you got to be top tier in Division 2 to get that kind of opportunity, draft wise, and put yourself in that kind of stock. And so at that time, I didn't have that case for going for myself. And so I really just needed a good solid year to show that what I can do. It was unfortunate what happened at Northern. Felt like that took me 10 steps back, but I felt like I also gained a lot during that time. And so I didn't really sweat that. I was looking forward to the future, what was next. And so, I know that I came back and, I accomplished that. And so now it was like, okay, do I continue on? And I me and the coach at Northern didn't really see eye to eye, and so, I chose to take my talents elsewhere. And, like today, we talk about transfer portal, you could have called it hitting the portal, and that's basically what I did. And so just to see what other opportunities were out there for me. So I was talking to, one of the teams I was talking to at that time was Kentucky Christian. Now they were NAIA, and at that time, and at that point I didn't care where it was, I just wanted the opportunity to really showcase what I can do. And I wasn't really too concerned then about, about where that was. And so Kentucky Christian, I was talking to the head coach for months. And he was a former NFL wide receiver and man of God, family man, and somebody, you look up to on and off the field. And so we were talking for a while about NAIA not being able to give out full scholarships, but they could kind of finagle it to where they could get you financial aid and, kind of offset the costs and things like that. So, went through all that talk, looked at my film. He's like, if we had a full scholarship, you'd have it. He felt like I was a next level player, an NFL caliber player. And we talked about that as well. Went on my visit. Visit was great. At that time, my wife was with me as well. And he put us in a hotel. We stayed at his house as well. Great time. We had great visits out there in Kentucky. And he was so excited about getting me an opportunity at Kentucky Christian. At that point, they had an NFL staff. Almost every coach was either a former NFL player or had coached at the NFL level. And so I was excited about that, even given it was NAIA. They were excited about me coming in and being the number one receiver. And, I remember us talking, and he's like, man, getting you to the NFL, no problem. He's like, I don't see that being an issue at all. You have what it takes. You have the talent. You have the size. You have the speed. It's really, he said, it sounds like to me, all you're looking for is a home. And that's exactly what I was looking for, right? A place to call home, a place to showcase what I can do, to try to get an opportunity at the next level. And so, and to do it with this coach who I already knew of and, already admire what he did in the league, I felt like it was a no-brainer. So about a week before I was going to move out there and take the opportunity, maybe even a little more than that, it was a while before I was literally about to make that decision to get ready. He would text me every day, you ready? The goal was for me to come in, catch about 60, 80 balls, 1,500 yards, make a name for myself, boom, and get a shot. And so I was excited, man. I trained hard. I felt like I was bigger, faster, stronger, like I intended to. And again, I continued to train with 2 temps, working on my own. And so I get a call from him. He says, man, I got to talk to you. I'm like, yeah, what's going on? And he said, man, I wish the AD would have told us this months ago, but he said, the AD said that you can't play here. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, you can't play. And he said, it's because you graduated from an NCAA school and you can't drop down to NAIA after having graduated from NCAA school. And so he said, there's absolutely nothing we can do. There's literally nothing they could have done. And so I'm like, oh God. Like I said, man, the adversity just kept coming for me. And he said that, and I'm like, oh man. He said, man, look, that's that. Like, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing we could do. And it is what it is. You can't come here, and unless that they change the rule book, then it's going to be what it is. And so the opportunity quickly closed, and once again I was back to like, where am I going to go? What and Lord, and that question again of like, not asking like, why is this happening to me, but Lord, what are you trying to teach me? What are you trying to accomplish in this moment? And so, though I had to trust God with the situation. I had to really do what the word says, is like, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so I could not see what was ahead, but I really had to continue to trust, and that's what I did. I didn't let the worry or the anxiety overcome me, but I just continued to put my trust and hope and faith in the Lord, that he would provide if this is his will. On a visit, sat down with the head coach and receiver coach. They both really, at the time, excited to have me down there. Heard I was transferring. And so really on the spot, they offered me a full ride there, and I played my last season there. Now, fast forward, for time's sake, again, I want to end on this. We had a chance to really set the tone on our season. I was really fired up that game because I saw some things in the paper where players were talking about what they would do to us. And I remember like it was yesterday, like they were saying they're going to put us in body bags. And I stood before the team, and, I'm like, man, this is disrespectful, and you can't just take that lightly. These guys went public in saying they are going to put us in body bags. I took that personally. And so I was really, really amped up for that game. Just kind of rewind to that sit down. They asked me on my visit, they asked me what my goals were. So for me, I let them know, like, I want to play professionally. If I can get a shot in the NFL, great. And I want to be a captain. I want to be a leader on my team. I want to be a light on my team for Christ. And, they're like, yeah, that's great. There's more to life than just football. And it went over my head at that moment what exactly he said. It just kind of let it go. And, to just give you some context as to what I'm going to tell you next. And so that first game, again, was an exciting one, because for me this is my last shot collegiately. So, for me, I was a little more turned up than I have been in the past. That first game, I made a big play. Head coach took me out, and I didn't know why. At first I was a little frustrated and kind of expressed my frustration on the sideline to my receiver coach, and that it was just like, just hang in there, we'll get you right back in. And I turned into another drive. And so I'm like, Coach, what's going on? Why am I not in this game? This is like the most important game of the season right now. I just spoke in the team meeting in front of the whole team as to why this game was so important and why it should be so important for the whole team. And so I couldn't understand what was happening. And that was literally the rest of my season was like that. I would get spotty playing time. After a while, I mean, it didn't take too long after that. I was going to the coaches in their office every day and trying to figure out why am I not on the field. Trying to figure out what I need to do to get on the field. I mean, I was already playing special teams, making plays on special teams. It wasn't like, I was a hard worker. I remember, the coaches telling me back then, they're like, practice wise, they're like, we've never seen any player in Malone history since they've been there ever make it a habit to stay after practice and get extra work and have other guys getting extra work. And that was just who I was, as a player. And so it wasn't like there wasn't there was a lack or something I wasn't doing. I would go to the coaches and they would say, you're doing everything right. You're doing this, you're doing that, and could name verbatim everything that I would do right. And so I was looking for, I'm critical of myself. And so I'm like, well, tell me what I need to do better so that I can change this outcome. And, it was just the same thing. It just nothing but good things to say from every coach. So I really couldn't understand what was happening. And I had to quickly remember that during this time, though I felt week after week, my chances getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer to get a shot at the next level. And, you really can't do that when you're not on the field. These scouts are investing in players that they know can not just play on Sundays, or play professionally, but they want to see what they're going to get. And they're making an investment in you at the next level. You're being paid to play a child's game. And so, you not being on the field for whatever reason is not working for you, right? In a practical sense. So I just felt week after week my dream slipping and being taken from me, really, because I was doing everything that I possibly could. Everything I was taught, everything I knew to do, everything I learned, I was applying it. And it just seemed I was just bumping up against a closed door. And, after a while, it was to the point where my teammates were going to the coaches without my knowing and demanding that I play, or expressing their frustration as to why the best player on the field is not playing. And so that went on all season long, and I was very disgruntled. Now I wasn't a guy who would be a cancer, I was still a team player and still trying to take a leadership role and play a leadership role, even though I wasn't getting my way on the field. I still was a captain. I still was a leader on the team. People still came to me. I was still even a spiritual leader on the team. And so, it was very frustrating, not just for me, but for my teammates who believed in me and knew that we had a better chance with me being on the field. And so that was very, very frustrating. But here comes the adversity that I really wanted to get to, because this part of the story really changed everything. So towards the end of the season, we had maybe a few weeks, maybe a week or two left in the season. We had just finished our last home game, and so we had a going away kind of ceremony, nothing official, but just amongst players and coaches after practice. And so the coaches would walk past the players almost like the 50-yard line at the end of the game. You know, teams are crossing, shaking hands, good game, that whole thing. So we did that with the coaches. The coaches would say a few words to the seniors, and the seniors would walk past as the coaches are coming from the opposite direction. And so when they came up to me, there were very few words said. You know, couldn't look me in the eye. You know, the coaches just, all they really had to say was, well, yeah, I know the season didn't really go your way, but, you know, good luck with everything moving forward. And of course, that made me very upset. After everything I had given to that team. And so afterwards, we're heading back to the locker room. One of the senior receivers who I started with, he pulled me to the side. He said, "Kev, I need to talk to you." And so I didn't really know. We didn't talk much. He didn't really talk much either. And so that's what drew my attention even more, because he seemed to be crying. And so I'm like, okay, this guy's crying. Like, you know, it's something serious. And so I'm like, yeah, man, like, let's talk. So I pull him to the side, and he's like, man, we can't talk here. We got to talk inside. So I'm like, oh man, this is serious. We go inside, and he's like, he has a letter in his hand. And he said, man, I just found out that I got an invite to an all-star game, a college all-star game, and the coaches didn't even inform me that I was invited, and I missed it. And so he was upset, because he was one of those few guys who, like myself, could play at the next level. And so we had about 5 of us on the team that year who were next level players, NFL caliber players. And so when he talked to me, he told me that, and he said that wasn't it. And I was like, oh, okay, what else? And he said, when I went in the office and looked on the desk, I saw letters with a bunch of NFL teams with your name on it, and, you know, letters of inquiry, just, you know, trying to inquire about me. And so I'm like, well, did you go back for him? Did you grab him? And he was like, I did. I tried to go back, and he said they were in the shredder. Mm-hmm. And so he couldn't find those letters. And so he said he went back for it. It was in the shredder. It was in a garbage bag. And then the garbage bag was gone when he tried to go back again. So I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And he told me that it was a handful for me. We had another kid named Brock, who was a 6'4" defensive end, 6'4", 6'5", beast. We had a safety who was a year younger. He was all conference, all conference safety, great size for a safety, and great speed, great playmaking ability. I mean, myself who had everything and just wasn't on the field, wasn't being used. And so that broke me. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I'm ready to give up. And if you know me, I don't have a give up bone in my body. Like, I wanted to give up on my dream and just call it quits. I'm like, this is not even worth it. Like, I'm doing everything I possibly can. And just, it's like nothing's working for me. And, spiritually speaking, I thought about the scriptures that I would go through when I went through the injury. If you watch the episode where actually it was this episode. I talked about the injury at Northern. And so during that time, I really learned more about the story of Joseph. Now, not Mary and Joseph, but this is Joseph, the coat of many colors. He was the youngest amongst his brothers. And this kid, God gave a dream, and he told everybody this dream. He told his brothers this dream. He told his family. His brothers got jealous, and from then on, it was a whirlwind of adversity that he could not control. And the kid was doing everything he knew to do. I'm sure everything right, it seemed, and everything was just going left for him. His brothers tried to kill him, and he ended up getting sold off into slavery, and just really wasn't where he really wanted to be, even though the Spirit of God was with him. And so he was still succeeding, but he knew deep down that this wasn't the dream. This wasn't this isn't how it's supposed to go, and that's kind of how I felt. But I was reminded during that time that about Joseph, and in scripture, it talks about later in scripture, it refers back to Joseph, and it says the word of the Lord tested Joseph. And so even Joseph doing those things right, he still had to go through a series of tests. And so I had to be reminded then that this is a testing that I have to go through, whether, I'm doing everything right or not. Now, nobody's perfect. I'm not either. I make mistakes constantly. And, but, I was reminded of the story of Joseph during this time. I really had to go in prayer and really see God about, man, like, what is this? What do I do? What do you want me to do? Again, going back to what I said early in the episode, trying not to ask that question of why are you doing this, but what are you trying to teach me? And so those were the questions that I needed answer from God. And so I felt like I got some confirmation, even though the season came to a close with very limited playing time. And so at the end of the season, wanted to share this too, is that the coaches had told me, hey, there's some paperwork you need to make sure you sign. It's mandatory that you do it. And you have to sign that before you go back home, because they asked me if I was staying up here or was I going back home. I'm like, I'm probably going back home. Um, and so they got the paperwork to me. I looked it over. It looked really official. I wasn't sure exactly what it was. I'd never seen paperwork like that before. And so luckily I knew a track coach at Malone. She was the head track coach. And she looked it over. I had her look it over. She said, man, this is coaching paperwork, like for you to become a coach at Malone. And I'm like, well, they told me this is mandatory and that I had to sign this. And so I didn't know what was going on. It was so confusing, at that time. Now, hindsight, I knew it was manipulation, right? And if you know anything about the Joseph story, someone lied about him and he was thrown in jail off of a lie. So he suffered for something he didn't do, right? And so this is what I mean about the story of Joseph and how it translates with the story. I really encourage you, if you're watching this podcast right now, to open it up and just go through it, and somebody encouraged me to go through it when I experienced that injury in Northern Michigan. Like I said, that was where I really understood that these trials that I was facing, this adversity I was facing, was actually trying to accomplish something in me. And so, and just developing my character and changing me to be a better man, ultimately man of God. So sat down with the track coach again. We went through it. I'm like, wow. I had to talk to my mom, let her know what happened. She's like, Kevin, don't sign it. I'm like, I don't plan on it. So what they were trying to do, obviously, was have me sign this paperwork, fill it in, put it in the coach's office, and basically bring me on the coaching staff and basically disregard my dreams of playing professionally and really throw it away for their own personal gain. And so that was how my college career ended. And so you talk about adversity, man. That one could have sent me off the deep end. And thankfully, my identity wasn't entirely in football. Now, I had dealt with that early on in high school, but going through that humbling journey really opened my eyes to see more of who God created me to be as an individual, which really didn't have anything to do with football at all. He just gave me the gift to play the game, right? The game comes so easily to me, and I'm super passionate about it with nobody forcing that on me, right? It just comes naturally, the passion for the game. And so, that was my senior year. And so there's a lot more that I can share about that time. Like I always say, I really want to keep the podcast in line with what this podcast is all about, is that everybody talks about the legacy, but no one talks about the journey, right? So we're just digging into the journey, the deeper parts, the darker parts, the not so good parts of the story that we live to tell about, that we stand on that high mountain and with the flag of victory, stuck in there, and we celebrate what we overcome. And that's really what this is about, you know. And so next episode, we will talk about my pro journey. And we'll just sum it up in a quick episode. 6 years is a lot to break down, but we'll kind of get through it as quickly as we can and talk about that next episode. But if you're here, you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I know it was a longer episode this week, but I also have my girls here in the studio with me. So if you heard them, that's if you heard anything background noise, that's probably my girls. Girls, y'all want to say hi to my audience. This is my eldest daughter, Samara. Say hi, Samara. Leilani, come here. Come here. Say hi.
Hi.
Say hi. She's so pretty. And then Camila.
Come here.
Samara. Leilani, she's got my brother's mask. And that's Camila. Hold on, Mom. Camila, you can say hi to everybody.
Hi.
You'll see more of them on some things that I won't reveal yet, but you'll see more of them in the future. These are my girls. Want to say thank you to everybody who's tuned in on the podcast. I know you probably never seen us on the podcast, people bringing their kids on, but you know, it's good. Like I said, I'm letting people in on a little bit more about me, and this is my fam. And so thank you everyone who's been tuning in. Guys, keep tuning in. There's one more episode, one more week of Sports Journeys. And again, we're going to break down my professional football journey in one episode. And we'll just call that a bonus episode, because I told you guys in the beginning I want to be a man of my word. I told you guys we do this in 8. So we covered that. But yeah, we'll throw in that extra bonus and talk about that. So see y'all next time. Peace.
Came out the bottom, I count a whole lot of young gonna worth millions of dollars. I asked out the charm, my little bitch modest. She made a few ends off a follow. You wanna on tour, a beauty the child. Live in a chrome title. Ain't no more worries, I'm up at it early. Your niggas tryna figure out the problem. But 30-30, I hit it like Curry. They hit me, I don't even holler. These niggas songs flop. Niggas ain't gon' stop. Switch out my cars and my 80, my family straight, and that's all that matter. Stacking them rest and then saving, put back for whatever, whenever it happens. I put my trust in my paper, I'm walking through straight, I don't see no one else. No, it ain't long this route. Simmons is better missteps. Stay ready, I'm already prepped. Undefeated, I feel like the champ. My bitch love the hunters, we fucking get money, she turning my tongue to a champ. You did it, I done it, you know how it coming, you don't wanna show them what the world. Go pick up a bag and that's across the country and light up that smoke in the air. Bitch is so trim, I treat her like my twin when I shop and I pop out a pair.